Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his face as he worked deep inside the asteroid mine. The drilling machine made loud noises as it cut through rock and metal. He had been doing this job for 3 years now, and his body was used to the hard work. The asteroid belt was not a pretty place to live, but it paid well enough. The mining station Series 7 was home to about 200 people. Most of them were like Jake, former soldiers who needed work after their military service ended. The station floated in space, far from Earth, surrounded by rocks that held valuable metals and minerals. Jake was checking the drill when the alarm started blasting. Red lights flashed everywhere. He dropped his tools and ran toward the main control room. Other miners were running too, all looking scared and confused. "What's happening?" Jake shouted over the noise. "Look at the screens," someone yelled back. Jake pushed through the crowd and saw the main display screen. His heart stopped. Huge ships filled the space around Earth. These were not human ships. They were massive, dark, and covered with strange lights. There had to be hundreds of them. Captain Roy Stevens, the station commander, was trying to get information from Earth. His voice was shaky as he spoke into the radio. "Earth Control, this is Series 7. We can see the ships from here. What are your orders?" The radio crackled with static. When a voice finally came through, it sounded terrified. "All stations, maintain position. Do not approach the alien vessels. We repeat, do not approach." Jake stared at the alien ships and felt something strange. The design looked familiar somehow. The dark metal hull with blue and silver markings reminded him of something from long ago. His mind went back 10 years, to a time when he was a different person. He had been 22 then, a Marine stationed on a planet called Kepler 442b. It was a rough world with purple skies and 2 suns. The human outpost there was small, just a research station and a few guard posts. Jake's job was to patrol the area and watch for trouble. It was during one of these patrols that everything changed. Jake was walking through a deep canyon when he heard a strange sound. It was like metal breaking and electricity sparking. He followed the noise and found something that should not have been there. A small spacecraft had crashed into the rocks. It was badly damaged, with smoke coming from broken parts. The ship was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was made of smooth, dark metal with blue and silver patterns that seemed to glow. Jake approached carefully, his rifle ready. The military had trained him to report any alien contact immediately. But when he looked inside the crashed ship, his training was forgotten. A girl was trapped inside. She looked young, maybe 16 by human standards, but she was clearly not human. Her skin was blue like the color of deep ocean water. Silver markings covered her arms and face in beautiful patterns. She was bleeding from cuts on her head and arm. The girl was barely conscious. Her eyes opened when she heard Jake approach, and he saw that they were bright green, like emeralds. She tried to speak, but the words were in a language he did not understand. She sounded scared and hurt. Jake knew he should call for backup. The rules were clear about alien contact. But looking at this injured girl, all he could think about was helping her. She was just a kid and she was dying. He put down his rifle and climbed into the wrecked ship. The girl tried to move away from him, clearly afraid. Jake held up his hands to show he meant no harm. He spoke softly, even though she could not understand his words. "It's okay," he said. "I want to help you." Jake used his medical kit to clean her wounds. The girl watched him with wide eyes, probably wondering why this strange alien was being kind to her. When Jake gave her water from his canteen, she drank it gratefully. For 3 days, Jake took care of the blue girl. He brought her food and water from his supplies. He covered her with his spare jacket when the planet's cold nights came. He even tried to learn some of her language, and she tried to learn some English words. On the 2nd day, she told him her name was Zara. She drew pictures in the dirt to show him that she was running from something bad. Her people were in trouble, and she had been trying to find help when her ship crashed. Jake did not fully understand her story, but he understood that she was alone and scared. He stayed with her, protecting her from the wild animals that came out at night. He never called for backup. Something told him that the military would not treat her with kindness. On the 3rd night, ships appeared in the sky. They were like the crashed vessel but much larger. Zara became excited when she saw them. She spoke rapidly in her language, pointing at the ships. The rescue ships landed near the canyon. Blue-skinned people like Zara came out, wearing strange armor and carrying weapons that glowed with energy. They found Jake and Zara together and seemed surprised that a human had helped one of their kind. Zara spoke to them quickly, gesturing toward Jake. The other aliens looked at him with curiosity, rather than hostility. One of them, who seemed to be their leader, nodded and said something that sounded like thanks. Before leaving, Zara approached Jake. She placed her small blue hand on his forehead, and he felt a warm, tingling sensation. Then she spoke words, in her language. Somehow, even though he did not understand the words themselves, Jake knew what she meant. She was saying, "Thank you, and I will remember." The aliens took Zara to their ship. She looked back at Jake one last time before disappearing inside. Then the ships rose into the sky and vanished among the stars. Jake never reported what happened. He told his commanders that he had found a crashed meteorite, nothing more. But he never forgot the blue girl with green eyes who had touched his life for 3 days. Now, 10 years later, staring at the alien fleet near Earth, Jake felt that same warm sensation he had experienced when Zara touched his forehead. The blue and silver markings on the ships were exactly like the ones on her crashed vessel. Could it be? He whispered to himself. The radio crackled again. This time, a new voice spoke. It was calm, clear, and spoke perfect English. But there was something about it that made Jake's heart race. "People of Earth," the voice said, "I am Empress Zarathul of the Viridian Collective. I come in peace, seeking one among you. I am looking for a human named Jake Martinez, who once showed great kindness to a lost child of my people." Jake felt the blood drain from his face. Around him, the other miners were talking excitedly about the message. But Jake could hardly breathe. The blue girl he had saved 10 years ago had returned, and somehow she had become an empress. The message from Empress Zarathul played again across every radio and television on Earth and in space. Jake stood frozen in the control room of Series 7, listening to the voice that was both familiar and completely different from the scared girl he remembered. "I seek Jake Martinez," the voice continued. 10 years ago, he saved my life when I was nothing but a refugee. Today, I return to honor that debt and offer humanity a gift beyond measure. Captain Stevens looked around the room until his eyes found Jake. "Martinez, you know something about this?" Jake's mouth was dry. Everyone in the control room was staring at him now. He had kept the secret for 10 years, and now it was about to change everything. I think I might," Jake said quietly. Within an hour, Earth's military was calling Series 7. They wanted to know everything Jake could tell them about his encounter with the alien girl. Jake found himself talking to generals and government officials he had only seen on television. "You never reported this contact?" General Hayes asked over the video link. Her face was stern and angry. "She was just a hurt kid," Jake replied. "I helped her, and then she left. I didn't think it mattered." "Didn't think it mattered," the general shouted. "First alien contact in human history, and you didn't think it mattered?" But other voices were more interested in what Jake could tell them about Zara and her people. Scientists asked about her biology and technology. Diplomats wanted to know about her personality and culture. Jake told them everything he could remember. How Zara had been running from something dangerous. How she had tried to learn English. How her people had seemed grateful when they rescued her. How she had touched his forehead before leaving. "Did she give any indication that she would return?" asked Dr. Smith, a specialist in alien languages. "She said she would remember," Jake answered. "But I thought that just meant she wouldn't forget my help." 2 days after the first message, the alien fleet moved closer to Earth. They stopped just outside the orbit of the moon, close enough to be clearly visible but far enough to avoid being threatening. Earth's military was on high alert, but the aliens made no aggressive moves. Then came the second message. "People of Earth, this is Empress Zarathul. I wish to meet with Jake Martinez and your leaders. I will send a small ship to collect Jake Martinez from his current location. Do not be afraid, we come in peace. Jake felt his stomach drop. They were coming for him specifically. Captain Stevens put his hand on Jake's shoulder. You don't have to go, he said. We can tell them you're not here. Jake thought about it for a moment. He could hide and maybe the aliens would leave. But then he remembered the scared girl bleeding in the crashed ship. He remembered the gratitude in her green eyes when he helped her. No, Jake said. If she wants to see me, I'll go. The alien ship arrived at Series 7 6 hours later. It was beautiful in a way that human ships were not. Instead of the rough, industrial look of human spacecraft, this vessel was smooth and graceful. It seemed to flow through space like it was swimming rather than flying. The ship docked with the mining station without any problems. When the airlock opened, Jake saw two figures waiting for him. One was clearly human, a woman in a diplomatic uniform who introduced herself as Ambassador Lisa Wang from Earth's government. The other was alien. The alien was tall and thin, with the same blue skin Jake remembered. But this one was male, with silver markings that formed different patterns than Zara's had. He wore armor that looked both ancient and advanced at the same time. I am Kethvar, the alien said in accented but clear English. I serve the Empress. Jake Martinez, she is eager to see you again. The trip to the main alien ship took only a few minutes, but Jake felt like it lasted forever. He kept thinking about what he would say to Zara. How do you talk to someone you knew as a frightened child who has become the ruler of an empire? The alien flagship was massive up close. It had to be several miles long, with towers and structures that looked more like a city than a spaceship. When their small craft entered the landing bay, Jake saw hundreds of other ships of different designs. Some looked like Zara's original vessel, but others were completely different, suggesting that her empire included many different species. Kethvar led Jake and Ambassador Wang through corridors that were both strange and beautiful. The walls seemed to be made of some kind of living crystal that glowed with soft light. Plants that Jake did not recognize grew in gardens that appeared to have no soil, their roots reaching into streams of flowing light. The Empress has prepared a special meeting room, Kethvar explained as they walked. She wanted you to feel comfortable. They entered a large chamber, and Jake stopped in surprise. The room had been decorated to look like the canyon where he had first met Zara. There were rocks and plants that looked similar to those on Kepler 442b. Even the lighting had been adjusted to match the purple-tinted sunlight of that world. At the center of the room stood a figure that Jake almost did not recognize. Zara had grown tall and elegant. She was still clearly the same person, with blue skin and silver markings, but now she carried herself with the confidence of someone used to command. Her clothes were made of material that seemed to shift color as she moved, and she wore a simple crown that looked like it was made of captured starlight. But when she saw Jake, her formal expression melted away. For a moment, she looked exactly like the scared girl he had helped 10 years ago. Jake Martinez, she said, her voice soft with emotion. You look exactly as I remembered. Jake did not know what to say. He had practiced words during the trip, but they all seemed stupid now. Finally, he just said, Hello, Zara. She smiled, and Jake saw that her teeth were white and normal, just like a human's. You still remember my name? I remember everything, Jake replied. Zara gestured for Jake and Ambassador Wang to sit on cushions that had been arranged around a low table. She sat across from them, but her eyes never left Jake's face. I have wanted to return here for many years, Zara said, but my duties as Empress kept me away. When I finally had the power to make this journey, I knew I had to find you first. Ambassador Wang cleared her throat. Your Majesty, we are honored by your visit. But we must ask, what are your intentions toward Earth? Zara turned to look at the human diplomat, and Jake saw her expression become more formal. This was the face of an empress talking to another government. Ambassador Wang, your people are in great danger, Zara said. There is an ancient enemy approaching your solar system. They are called the Devourers, and they consume entire worlds. They will reach Earth in approximately 3 months. Jake felt his blood turn cold. Consume worlds, what does that mean? Zara's expression became sad. They are machines now. but they were once a living species like us. Long ago, they chose to give up their bodies and become artificial beings. In doing so, they lost their souls. Now they exist only to grow and consume. They take the matter from planets and use it to build more of themselves. How do you know they're coming here? Ambassador Wang asked. Because we have been fighting them for over 200 years, Zara replied. They have already destroyed 2 star systems on their path toward your galaxy. We tried to stop them, but we failed. They are too strong for any one species to defeat. Jake leaned forward. But you think humans can help somehow? Zara looked at him with those same green eyes he remembered. Jake, do you remember what you did for me in that canyon? I helped someone who was hurt, Jake said simply. You did more than that, Zara said. You chose to help someone who could give you nothing in return. You risked your career, maybe your life, for a stranger. That is something my people had forgotten how to do. Zara stood and walked to a window that showed the stars outside. The Viridian Collective includes 12 different species. We are advanced in technology and knowledge, but we have become cold and calculating. We make decisions based on logic and profit. We had forgotten what it means to act from the heart. She turned back to Jake. Your species is different. Humans do things that make no logical sense, but somehow they work. You fight against impossible odds. You sacrifice for others. You never give up hope, even when hope seems foolish. So you want us to join your war? Ambassador Wang asked. I want to offer you membership in the collective, Zara said. Not as subjects or servants, but as equals. Together, we might have a chance to stop the Devourers. Apart, we will all fall. Jake thought about what this meant. An alliance with an alien empire. Technology beyond human imagination. But also war against an enemy that had already destroyed star systems. What would this mean for Earth? He asked. Zara sat back down and looked directly at him. It would mean everything changes, Jake. Your people would gain access to technology that would solve hunger, disease, and poverty. You would join a community of species that spans the galaxy. But you would also have to prove that you are ready for such responsibility. How do we prove that? Ambassador Wang asked. By showing that what Jake did for me was not unique, Zara replied. By demonstrating that humanity can work together, both with each other and with alien species. By proving that your capacity for sacrifice and hope is real. Jake felt the weight of her words. The scared girl he had helped in a canyon had become the leader of an interstellar empire, and now she was offering humanity a chance to join something bigger than they had ever. The news of the alien offer spread across Earth in hours. Jake found himself at the center of the biggest story in human history. Television crews wanted to interview him. Scientists wanted to study him. Politicians wanted to use him. But Jake was more interested in learning about the collective and the threat they faced. Zara invited him to stay aboard her flagship while Earth's leaders discussed the alliance. Ambassador Wang returned to Earth to report to the government, leaving Jake alone with the aliens for the first time since his rescue of Zara. Zara gave Jake a tour of her ship, which she called the Star of Viridius. It was like walking through a living city. The corridors were wide and filled with beings from different worlds. Jake saw creatures that looked like walking trees, others that seemed to be made of living crystal, and some that floated in the air like jellyfish. These are my people, Zara explained as they walked. Not just Viridians like myself, but representatives from all 12 species in our collective. She introduced Jake to some of them. There was Dr. Quill, a plant-like being called a Sylvani, who was working on new medicines. His bark-covered skin could change color based on his mood, and his voice sounded like wind through leaves. Fascinating, Dr. Quill said when he met Jake. A human who acts on emotion rather than logic yet achieves positive results. Your species will make an interesting addition to our research. Jake also met Captain Nexus, one of the crystal beings, called Quantar. She was the ship's chief engineer, and her body sparkled with internal lights as she spoke. Your technology is primitive, she said bluntly, but your innovative thinking is remarkable. You solve problems in ways we would never consider. As they toured the ship, Jake began to understand the scope of what Zara was offering. The collective had technology that could heal any disease, provide unlimited energy, and allow faster-than-light travel between stars. They had solved most of the problems that plagued human civilization, but there was a cost. Each species that joins the collective must prove they are ready, Zara explained, as they stood in the ship's central garden. They must show they can work together with other species and put the greater good above their own interests. Jake looked around at the incredible technology surrounding him. What happens if a species fails the test? Zara's expression became sad. We have to leave them to face the devourers alone. We cannot risk bringing a species into the collective that might cause division or conflict when we need unity most. That evening, Jake received a video call from Earth. The world's leaders had been meeting non-stop since Ambassador Wang's return. President Adams appeared on the screen, looking tired and stressed. Jake, we need your advice, the president said. The Empress seems to trust you. What do you think we should do? Jake thought carefully before answering. I think we should try, sir. If the devourers are really coming, we need all the help we can get. And if we can become part of something bigger, something that helps other worlds too, isn't that worth the risk? But not everyone on Earth agreed. General Hayes had been organizing opposition to the alliance. She believed that humanity should fight the devourers alone, using stolen alien technology if necessary. 3 days later, the general made her move. Jake was sleeping in his guest quarters when alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed, and he could hear running footsteps in the corridors. He quickly got dressed and ran toward the command center. Zara was standing in front of a large display screen, talking rapidly with her officers. When she saw Jake, her expression was grim. General Hayes has attempted to steal one of our scout ships, she said. Her soldiers attacked our landing party on Earth's moon base. 3 of my people were injured. Jake felt sick. Is this going to ruin everything? Before Zara could answer, Captain Stevens appeared on the communication screen. He was calling from Series 7, and he looked angry. Jake, you need to know what's happening, Stevens said. General Hayes has taken over several military bases. She's claiming that the aliens are lying about the devourers and that they're really here to invade Earth. That's not true, Jake said quickly. I know that, and you know that, Stevens replied. But a lot of people are scared. They're listening to her. The situation got worse over the next few days. General Hayes had support from about 30% of Earth's military. They had taken control of several space stations and were threatening to attack any alien ships that came too close to Earth. Zara called a meeting with her senior officers. Jake was invited to attend along with Ambassador Wang, who had returned to the flagship. The situation is unacceptable, said Admiral Corvin, a tall Viridian with scars across his blue face. If the humans cannot control their own military, how can we trust them in a war against the devourers? Other officers agreed. They wanted to leave Earth and let humanity face the devourers alone. Jake could see that the alliance was falling apart before it had even begun. Please, Jake said, standing up in the meeting. Don't judge all of humanity by what General Hayes is doing. Most of us want this alliance. We want to work with you. But can you prove it? Zara asked. Can you show us that humanity is truly ready to join the collective? Jake thought about it, then he had an idea. Let me go to Earth, he said. Let me talk to the people who are following General Hayes. If I can convince them to stand down, will that prove that humanity can solve its own problems? Zara looked uncertain. It could be dangerous. General Hayes sees you as a traitor to humanity. I have to try, Jake said. If I don't, then we'll never know if humans are really ready for this. Ambassador Wang supported Jake's plan. We could organize a meeting at the United Nations. Jake could speak to representatives from all nations, including those supporting General Hayes. Zara agreed, but with conditions. You will not go alone. I will send Kethvar with you and a small team of collective representatives. This will be a test for both of our species. Can humans and aliens work together to solve a crisis? The team that went to Earth included Jake, Kethvar, Dr. Quill, the plant scientist, and Captain Nexus, the crystal engineer. Their mission was to convince the world that the alliance was worth the risk. The meeting took place at UN headquarters in New York. Representatives from every nation on Earth attended, including those supporting General Hayes. The general herself was there, along with several of her military supporters. Jake stood at the podium looking out at hundreds of faces. Some looked hopeful, others suspicious or afraid. He thought about the scared blue girl he had helped 10 years ago, and how that one act of kindness had led to this moment. 10 years ago, I met someone who was lost and afraid. Jake began. I helped her because it was the right thing to do, not because I expected anything in return. Today, that person has become Empress Zarathul, and she's offering us a chance to join something amazing. He talked about what he had seen aboard the collective ships, the technology that could end hunger and disease, the cooperation between different species, the chance for humanity to explore the galaxy. But he also talked about the cost. We have to prove we're ready, Jake said. We have to show that we can work together, not just as humans, but with other species too. We have to put aside our fears and our need to control everything. General Hayes stood up in the audience. And what if this is all a trick? She demanded. What if they're lying about these devourers? What if they just want to conquer us? Jake looked directly at her. Then we'll fight them, just like we'd fight the devourers. But General, I've seen what the collective can do. If they wanted to conquer us, they could have done it already. They're here because they need our help and we need theirs. The debate went on for hours, but slowly, Jake could see opinions changing. Dr. Quill explained how collective medicine could cure diseases that killed millions of humans every year. Captain Nexus showed holographic displays of clean energy technology that could end poverty. Kethvar spoke about his own species' experience joining the collective. We were afraid too, he said. We thought we would lose our identity, our independence. Instead, we became part of something greater while remaining ourselves. In the end, the vote was close, but the alliance was approved. General Hayes and her supporters agreed to stand down, though some remained suspicious. As they prepared to return to the flagship, Zara sent Jake a private message. You have given me hope, she said. Your people are not perfect, but they are willing to try. That is more than many species can say. Jake looked up at the alien ships waiting in orbit. Humanity had passed its first test, but he knew there would be many more challenges ahead. The real test would come when the Devourers arrived. But for now, Earth had taken its first step toward joining something bigger than itself. And it had all started with one person, choosing to help a stranger in need. With the alliance approved, everything changed quickly for humanity. Collective ships arrived at Earth carrying teachers, engineers, and doctors from 12 different species. They began sharing technology that seemed like magic to human scientists. Jake found himself with a new job. Zara appointed him as the first human collective liaison officer. His task was to help humans and aliens work together and to prepare joint military units for the coming war against the Devourers. The first challenge was bigger than anyone expected. Humans and aliens thought about problems in completely different ways. What seemed logical to one species seemed crazy to another. Jake worked with a team that included some remarkable people. There was Lisa Wang, who had left her diplomatic job to become an engineer. She was brilliant at understanding how collective technology worked and finding ways to combine it with human designs. Captain Roy Stevens had volunteered to command the first human starship built with collective technology. He was a former Navy pilot who learned to fly spacecraft that could travel between stars in days instead of years. Dr. Elena Ross was a scientist who studied how different species could work together. She helped solve problems when humans and aliens misunderstood each other, which happened more often than anyone liked. But the most important member of Jake's team was Kethvar, the Viridian warrior who had become his closest friend among the aliens. Kethvar understood both human and collective military tactics, and he helped train the joint forces that would fight the Devourers. The training was hard. Human soldiers had to learn to work with beings who looked and thought nothing like them. Alien warriors had to understand human tactics that seemed reckless and illogical. Your people fight like they are crazy, Kethvar told Jake one day after a particularly difficult training exercise. They take risks that no sensible being would take. Sometimes crazy works, Jake replied. Sometimes you have to do something impossible to win. As the weeks passed, Jake learned more about Zara's rise to power. She had not inherited her position as Empress. She had earned it by uniting the different species of the collective when they were fighting among themselves. Before Zara became our leader, we were losing the war against the Devourers, Kethvar explained. Each species wanted to fight in their own way. The Viridians wanted to use diplomacy. The Quantar wanted to use technology. The Silvani wanted to study the enemy first. What changed? Jake asked. Zara remembered what you taught her, Kethvar said. That sometimes you have to help others even when it costs you something. She convinced each species to share their strengths instead of hiding them. But Zara's greatest lesson from her time with Jake was about sacrifice. She had learned that sometimes the right choice was not the logical choice, but the one that helped others. 2 months before the Devourers were expected to arrive, their scout ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. These were smaller vessels sent ahead to study the defenses they would face. Jake was aboard the Star of Viridius when the first battle began. The joint human collective fleet moved to intercept the Devourer scouts before they could reach the inner planets. The enemy ships were unlike anything Jake had imagined. They looked like metal insects, all sharp angles and glowing red lights. But when the shooting started, Jake saw that they were incredibly dangerous. The Devourer weapons could eat through the strongest armor. When they hit a ship, the metal would simply disappear, leaving gaping holes. Several collective vessels were destroyed in the first few minutes of fighting, but then the human ships did something that surprised everyone. Instead of fighting in the careful, organized way they had been taught, they started using tactics that seemed completely insane. Captain Stevens led his ship directly toward a much larger Devourer vessel, firing all weapons and ignoring the damage his ship was taking. At the last second, he spun his ship around and launched every missile he had at point-blank range. The Devourer ship was destroyed, but Stevens's ship was badly damaged. When asked why he had taken such a crazy risk, his answer was simple. It worked, didn't it? Other human ships followed similar tactics. They used ramming attacks, suicide runs, and strategies that put their own survival at risk to protect the larger fleet. The collective officers were amazed. This is why we need your species, Admiral Corvin told Jake after the battle. You do things that we would never think of, and somehow they work. The victory gave everyone hope, but it also revealed how dangerous the real enemy would be. The scout ships had been small and relatively weak. The main Devourer fleet would be much more powerful. After the battle, Jake and Zara walked through the ship's medical bay, visiting the wounded from both human and alien crews. Jake noticed that Zara spent extra time with each patient regardless of their species. You've changed, Jake told her as they left the medical bay. How so? Zara asked. 10 years ago, you were just trying to survive. Now you're taking care of everyone, Zara smiled. I learned that from you. You helped me when you had no reason to. Now I try to do the same for others. That night, they stood together on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Earth was visible in the distance, blue and beautiful against the black of space. Jake, I need to tell you something, Zara said. The main Devourer fleet is larger than we first thought. Our spies report that it includes over 1,000 ships, some of them the size of small moons. Jake felt his stomach drop. Do we have enough ships to fight them? We have about 300 ships in the combined fleet, Zara replied. The odds are not good. Then why are you doing this? Jake asked. Why risk everything for Earth? Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Because you showed me that some things are worth fighting for even when you cannot win. You taught me that the right choice is not always the smart choice. I was just helping someone who was hurt, Jake said. No, Zara replied, turning to look at him. You were showing me what it means to have hope. You believed that things could be better even in a situation that seemed hopeless. Jake thought about the scared girl he had found in the crashed ship. She had been running from something terrible, just like humanity was now. But she had survived and she had grown strong. We're going to need that hope, Jake said. Yes, Zara agreed. Because in 3 days our scouts report that the main Devourer fleet will arrive, and then we will face the real test. Jake looked out at the stars and thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. One act of kindness had grown into an alliance between species. A scared refugee had become an empress. And now, humanity was about to fight for its survival, alongside aliens who had become friends. The test was not just about military strength or technology. It was about whether different species could truly work together when everything was at stake. It was about whether the lessons Zara had learned from Jake's kindness could be enough to save not just Earth, but the entire collective. In 3 days, they would find out. Jake spent those 3 days working with his team to prepare for the battle. Lisa Wang had designed new weapons that combined human innovation with collective technology. Captain Stevens had trained human pilots to work with alien wingmates. Dr. Ross had helped solve the last communication problems between species. But the most important preparation was something that could not be planned or practiced. It was the trust that had grown between humans and aliens, the belief that they could depend on each other when the fighting started. On the last night before the battle, Jake received a message from Earth. It was from Captain Martinez of Series 7. Along with video messages from miners, soldiers, scientists, and ordinary people from around the world. "We believe in you, Jake," one message said. "You saved that girl 10 years ago, and now maybe you can help save all of us." Jake realized that he was no longer just the man who had helped a stranger in a canyon. He had become a symbol of what humans and aliens could accomplish together. The weight of that responsibility was frightening, but it also gave him strength. Tomorrow, the real war would begin, and everything would depend on whether the lessons learned from one small act of kindness could be enough to defeat an enemy that had consumed star systems. The Devourer fleet appeared like a dark storm across the stars. Jake stood on the bridge of the Star of Iridius, watching the enemy ships emerge from faster-than-light travel. There were so many of them that they blocked out entire sections of space. Each Devourer vessel was a nightmare of twisted metal and glowing red energy. The largest ships were the size of cities, covered with weapons and armor made from the consumed remains of dead worlds. They moved through space with terrible purpose, heading directly toward Earth. "All ships, this is Admiral Corvin." The voice came over the communication system. "Prepare for battle. Remember, we fight not just for our own worlds, but for the future of all free species." The combined human collective fleet moved to intercept the enemy. 300 ships against over 1,000. Jake knew the numbers were bad, but he also knew they had something the Devourers did not. They were fighting for something greater than themselves. The first shots were fired when the fleets were still millions of miles apart. Beams of energy that could destroy mountains crossed the void between the ships. The Devourers' weapons were designed to consume and convert matter, turning enemy ships into raw materials for their own use. But the joint fleet had surprises. Human tactics combined with collective technology created strategies the Devourers had never faced before. Captain Stevens led a group of small, fast ships in attacks that seemed suicidal, but managed to damage much larger enemy vessels. The crystal beings used their ship's ability to become temporarily incorporeal, allowing them to pass through enemy fire and attack from unexpected angles. The plant-like Sylvani had developed weapons that could disrupt the Devourer's ability to convert matter. For hours, the battle raged across the solar system. Ships on both sides were destroyed, but the collective fleet was slowly being overwhelmed. For every Devourer ship they destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Jake was coordinating communications between the different species when Zara made a decision that changed everything. "I'm taking a strike team to the Devourer command ship," she announced to her officers. "If we can disable their central control, the rest of the fleet might be vulnerable." Admiral Corvin immediately objected. "Empress, that's suicide. The command ship is protected by hundreds of smaller vessels." "Then we'll have to fight through them," Zara replied calmly. Jake stepped forward. "I'm going with you." "Jake." "No," Zara said. "This is not your fight." "Yes, it is," Jake replied. You said it yourself. I taught you about sacrifice. Well, sometimes you have to be willing to sacrifice everything for what you believe in. Zara looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Very well. But this time, we faced the danger together. The strike team included Jake, Zara, Kethavar, Lisa Wang, and volunteers from several species. They took the fastest ship in the fleet, a sleek vessel designed for speed rather than heavy fighting. Getting to the command ship meant flying through the middle of the battle. Enemy fighters swarmed around them, firing weapons that could dissolve their ship's hull. Lisa Wang, now serving as their pilot, used every trick she had learned to keep them alive. Hang on, she shouted as she spun the ship between two massive Devourer vessels, using their own weapons fire to destroy enemy fighters. They reached the command ship after losing half their escort. The Devourer flagship was enormous, a twisted mass of metal and machinery that seemed to pulse with its own evil life. Getting inside required flying into launch bays that were defended by automated weapons. The ship shook as enemy fire hit their hull. We're not going to make it at this rate. Kethavar reported from the weapons station. Jake made a decision. Lisa, get us close to that launch bay. I'm going to board their ship. That's crazy, Lisa replied. You'll be killed the moment you step outside. Maybe, Jake said. But maybe I can create enough of a distraction for the rest of you to get inside. Zara grabbed his arm. I won't let you do this alone. You have to, Jake said. You're the Empress. Your people need you to survive this. My people need me to be the leader you taught me to be, Zara replied. And that means I don't abandon my friends. In the end, they all went together. The boarding party fought their way through the Devourer ship's corridors, facing mechanical guardians that had once been living beings. The inside of the ship was a horror of twisted biology and cold machinery. At the center of the ship, they found what they were looking for, the command center where the Devourer fleet was being controlled. But what they discovered there changed everything. The central command was not a computer or a machine. It was a massive chamber filled with glowing energy, and floating in the center was something that had once been alive. It looked like a brain the size of a building, connected to thousands of cables and surrounded by machinery that kept it functioning. What is that? Lisa whispered. Dr. Quill, who had joined the boarding party, examined the readings on his scanner. It's the preserved consciousness of the original Devourer species. They transferred their minds into machines to achieve immortality, but this is what's left of their original leader. As they watched, the consciousness seemed to become aware of their presence. A voice spoke, not through speakers but directly into their minds. It was filled with pain and loneliness. Who are you? The voice asked. It has been so long since anyone spoke to me. Jake stepped forward despite the danger. We're here to stop you from destroying our worlds. Destroy? The voice seemed confused. No. I don't want to destroy. I just want the pain to stop. I want to remember what it felt like to be alive. Zara moved to stand beside Jake. What happened? To you? The consciousness told them its story. Long ago, the Devourers had been a peaceful species, much like humans or Viridians, but they had been terrified of death. So they had transferred their minds into machines to live forever. We thought we would be free, the voice said sadly. But we lost everything that made us who we were. We can't feel joy or love or hope. We can only consume, trying to fill the emptiness inside us. Jake felt something he had never expected to feel for the enemy. Pity. It doesn't have to be this way. Yes, it does, the voice replied. We can't go back, we can't be alive again. Maybe not, Jake said. But you can choose to stop hurting others. I can't. The programming won't let me. I'm trapped in this prison of metal and circuits. Zara stepped closer to the central chamber. What if we could free you? Free me? The voice became excited. You would do that? Even after everything we've done? Jake thought about the scared blue girl he had helped 10 years ago. Everyone deserves a chance for redemption. Working together, the team found a way to disconnect the consciousness from the fleet's control systems. It was dangerous work. If they made a mistake, the entire ship could explode. But Lisa Wang's understanding of technology, combined with Dr. Quill's scientific knowledge and Kethavar's warrior courage, made it possible. As the final connections were severed, the voice spoke one last time. "Thank you for showing me kindness I had forgotten existed. I will use what little time I have left to call off the fleet." The consciousness used its remaining power to send a shutdown signal to the entire Devourer fleet. Across the solar system, the enemy ships simply stopped fighting and began to power down. Jake and his team barely escaped the command ship before it began to break apart. Without the artificial intelligence controlling it, the vessel could no longer hold together. Thai Kiwang. Battle was over. Humanity and the collective had won, not through superior firepower, but through an act of compassion toward their enemy. 6 months later, Jake stood in the same observation deck where he had talked with Zara before the battle. But now, the view was very different. Ships from a dozen different species moved peacefully through the solar system. Earth had taken its place as a full member of the collective. The former Devourer territories were being transformed. Without their leaders' madness driving them, many of the machine beings were learning to remember what it meant to be alive. It would take generations, but there was hope for them now. Zara had stepped down as Empress, choosing instead to work as an equal partner with Jake in building a new kind of civilization. The collective was changing, becoming less of an empire and more of a true cooperative where every voice mattered. "Do you ever regret it?" Zara asked as they watched the ships outside. "Helping that scared girl in the canyon?" Jake smiled. "Never. That moment taught me that small actions can have big consequences. You never know how one choice might change everything." A communication signal arrived. Another refugee ship had been found, this time carrying survivors from a species that had escaped a different kind of disaster. As Jake and Zara prepared to meet them, Jake realized that what had started as one moment of kindness had become something that would echo through the galaxy for generations. 10 years ago, Zara said as they walked toward the shuttle bay. "You saved one lost girl. Today we're saving the universe one act of kindness at a time." Jake nodded, thinking about all the people, human and alien, who had learned that sometimes the right choice was not the logical choice, but the one that helped others. The scared refugee he had helped had grown up to teach an entire galaxy about hope and compassion. And it all started because one person chose to help a stranger in need. As their shuttle launched toward the new refugee ship, Jake looked by,